I grabbed my helmet hastily, almost ripping it off the hook. The key came with it, in the same sharp, rough movement, as if each gesture were a way of not exploding. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to leave. I forced the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, loud and harsh, as if it felt the same anger burning in my chest. The sound filled everything. It vibrated in my chest, my stomach, my teeth. It almost covered what I was trying to silence inside. I jumped on the bike in one leap. I accelerated before taking a deep breath. The gate had barely opened, and I was already on the street, tearing up the asphalt as if running away would save me from something. The wind came strong, cutting, hitting my face, my chest, my soul. It burned, but it was good. It was as if the wind carried away what was left of me, the anger, the tiredness, the memory. The noise of the engine was loud, constant, and at that moment, it was all I needed to hear. With every corner I left behind, the tension eased a little from my shoulders. But the lump in my throat was still there. I didn't think about anything else. I couldn't. Because if I thought, I would stop. And stopping was not an option. With every mile I traveled away from home, it was as if something inside me loosened. My chest began to open, my breathing became easier. The anger was still there, but it no longer burned in the same way. It was more like embers alive, but controlled. My name is Mark. I'm 42 years old, married for 20 years. And that afternoon, everything went off the rails because of nonsense. Small things. So small that on any other day, they would have gone unnoticed. But after so much time sharing your life with someone, you learn or should learn that it's not the storm that sinks the boat. It's the last straw. And that drop fell. The words piled up, one on top of the other, too fast, too sharp. It started as nothing, a casual comment, a dirty look, an impatient gesture. But suddenly, we were both standing, voices raised, hands tense, eyes hard. It was no longer about what started the conversation. It was about everything that had been kept inside. I saw things getting out of control, and before it hurt any more, before I said something I shouldn't, I did what my instincts told me to do. I left. I grabbed my motorcycle keys, my helmet, and left. It was what always worked. The road, the wind on my face, the roar of the engine filling the emptiness inside, and, above all, the speed. I loved speed. That feeling of cutting through the air, of being pulled by the force of my own momentum, of leaving everything behind without looking in the rearview mirror. Accelerating was more than just going fast. It was a kind of fury, disguised as freedom. With every curve taken without braking, every straight stretch conquered with my body pressed against the tank, I felt more alive. The afternoon light was slowly fading, gilding everything around me. The asphalt glistened in patches, and shadows stretched along the sides of the road. When I was there, on two wheels, with no limits, no voice in my ear, no obligations, it was as if the world had fallen silent. And that afternoon, more than ever, I needed the world to be silent. A while later, I spotted a gas station on the side of the road. I decided to stop. I needed to stretch my legs, have something to drink, maybe an energy drink, something to dispel the numbness of the anger that still vibrated softly inside me. I parked the motorcycle near the shade of an old awning. I turned off the engine with that mechanical gesture, and the silence that followed seemed heavier than the noise of the road. I slowly took off my helmet, feeling the heat stuck to my skin and the sweat running down the back of my neck. It was at that moment that something pulled me. A few meters away from me, almost leaning against the gas pump, there was a man sitting on his motorcycle. He must have been in his early 40s, maybe close to my age. His gray hair shone in the afternoon sun, cut close on the sides, and his body, stocky, solid, with well-defined muscles under his tight black shirt. He seemed completely at ease there, as if that place were an extension of his own body. He looked directly at me, without beating around the bush, without pretense, a firm, confident gaze. And then, he blinked. Not a tick, not a distracted gesture. It was intentional, subtle, but clear. I stood still for a second, my helmet still hanging in my hand, as if time had come to a sudden halt. Why did he do that? Did he like my motorcycle? Was it a gesture of camaraderie between motorcyclists? Or was it something else? Something more? I couldn't figure it out right away, but I felt something in my stomach. It wasn't discomfort. It was curiosity, perhaps a slight electric shock in my chest, as if something had been turned on without warning. I got off the bike slowly, trying not to look affected. I went straight to the convenience store, trying to ignore the fact that, with every step, I felt his eyes following me. And that made me feel strange. Alive. I grabbed the energy drink from the cold shelf. My hand was still shaking a little, but I tried to hide it. I went to the cashier, paid silently, and left, hoping to simply get back on my bike, open the can, and move on, as if nothing had happened. But as I approached, I stopped. He was there, standing, next to my bike. My heart leapt in my chest, one of those leaps you can feel in your throat. I didn't understand why, but I suddenly felt nervous. It wasn't fear. It was a mixture of anxiety, surprise, and something else that was harder to name. His presence, up close, was even stronger. His broad body, arms covered up to his elbows, his chest heaving under his tight shirt, everything about him took up space. But it wasn't just his physique. It was the way he looked at me. Direct, calm, as if he knew exactly what he was doing to me. I approached him, trying to appear natural. My voice came out lower than I wanted. "Hello, how are you?" He smiled slightly and replied calmly. "Hello, I'm fine, and you?" A short pause. His eyes never left mine. "Nice to meet you. My name is Ruan." I swallowed hard. "Nice to meet you, Ruan. I'm Mark." He held out his hand. And when mine met his, something happened. His touch was firm, warm, confident. But what got me was the look in his eyes. He looked at me in a way no one had ever looked at me before. Not even my wife. Not anyone. It was as if he had seen me completely, inside and out, right there in that handshake. There was no cheap seduction, no games, just truth. And that disarmed me in an instant. I felt my body relax. Something inside me opened up like a window I didn't even know was locked. In that second, I knew. I had never been with another man. I had never kissed one. I had never even imagined it clearly. But if he kissed me there, in the middle of that gas station, with people around, with the sun still high and cars passing by, I would kiss him back. Without fear, without guilt, I would kiss him. We started talking right there, next to the motorcycles, with the low sound of the road in the background and the afternoon sun beginning to set on the horizon. The conversation was still light, a little shy, but sincere. I mentioned, somewhat vaguely, the reason I was there, just the necessary details. He listened attentively, in no hurry to fill the silence. He said that his day wasn't going well either. His voice was lower at that moment, laden with something I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it. It was then that he looked around and said, with disconcerting naturalness, "Do you want to get out of here?" I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "What's the idea?" He smiled, one corner of his mouth lifting first, and replied, "My farm is nearby. It has a nice view there. I think you'll like it." Without thinking too much, I blurted out, "Let's go." I love nature. And it was true. Maybe that was what I needed most at that moment. Fresh air, open skies, and someone to lift me off the ground or put me back on it. He got on his motorcycle naturally, as if driving me there was the most obvious thing in the world. I got on mine too, and soon we were on the road, him in front, me following closely behind. A few minutes later, he left the asphalt and turned onto a cobblestone street. The motorcycle bounced slightly on the uneven stones, and the scenery around us began to change: more trees, more fields, less noise. Until, after a few turns, we arrived at a large, imposing wooden gate with dark iron hinges. He took a remote control out of his jacket pocket, pressed a button, and the gate opened slowly, creaking softly, as if revealing a secret. We continued on. We passed a few houses, old sheds, long shadows cast by tall trees. Everything there smelled of time, of beaten earth, of a life lived calmly. And then we arrived at the lookout point. It was simply beautiful. A wide, open cliff, with a view stretching as far as the eye could see. The sky was already beginning to take on shades of gold and orange, and the wind blew steadily, bringing the smell of the earth, the vegetation, the end of the afternoon. He turned off the motorcycle. He got off. I did the same. We slowly approached the edge of the cliff, and then he held my hand. His warm palm met mine firmly. Our fingers intertwined in a gesture so simple, yet it pierced me through and through. He looked down, then at me, and said with a slight smile, "Be careful. You won't fall from here. Not now." I laughed, a little awkwardly. "Not now? Why?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at me with those calm, intense eyes and said, "Because, not now that I've found you." And then, without hesitation, he moved closer. His face came slowly, his eyes fixed on mine, as if waiting for a signal, but he already knew I wasn't going to back down. And I didn't back down. The kiss came, calm at first, then deeper, fuller, warm, firm, present. My eyes closed at the same moment. Time seemed to stop. The wind disappeared. The sound of leaves, of motorcycles in the distance, of anything, everything, fell silent. At that moment, only he existed. The taste, the touch, the warmth of his mouth on mine, and I knew, without a doubt, that was where I wanted to be. After that day, my life changed. Not suddenly, not like in a movie. It changed inside, in the silence of things that begin to move slowly, almost without us noticing. But when I realized it, I was no longer the same man who left home angry that afternoon. Ruan and I started seeing each other frequently. At first, everything was new. The way he talked to me, the way he listened to me, the space he gave me to exist without masks. It was as if he saw parts of me that I myself had hidden not out of shame, but out of habit, for fear of messing up a life that I thought I needed to keep going at any cost. But I got tired of sustaining something that no longer sustained me. I gathered my courage. I talked to my wife. I separated. It wasn't easy. 20 years don't just disappear without pain. But I needed to be honest, first with myself. I didn't want to live divided anymore between what I showed and what I felt, between what was expected of me and what my heart had been silently asking for so long. Ruan was already divorced. And over time, we built something real. We are planning to move in together. And that's not just sharing a roof. It's sharing a life. Silences. Routine. The desire to grow old alongside someone who knows who you really are and chooses to stay anyway. Today, when I look back, I see that that road, that kiss, that look, were the beginning of another life. A lighter life. A more honest life. And what I learned from all this is simple but profound. True love doesn't come to fill what's missing in you. It comes when you finally allow yourself to be whole. And that's how I found myself. When I stopped running away from myself, when I had the courage to love without guilt, without fear, without pretending.